had a baby.
In a single day?
This is our daughter Poppy.
What would happen to Poppy?
She would cease to exist.
I remember her being my daughter, and if I remember it, then it's true. And I can't help you in the fight. My battle is in there, saving my daughter. If Poppy's real, that means she was mine.
I swear on my life, I will do anything to find her.
I had to get back home, because that was the point all this time. I need to get back for Poppy. Poppy's waiting for me. My daughter. Poppy. 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 Poppy.
Poppy.
Poppy. Poppy. Poppy.
Poppy.
Poppy. Poppy. Poppy. Poppy. Poppy. Poppy.
Poppy.
Poppy.
Poppy.
What the No, seriously, what the fuck? I'm sorry, but I can't start the episode, just jump into the review the way I normally do, because that was seriously one of the most shockingly disappointing hours of television I've experienced ever. Okay, so Shooty, shockingly, wrongly in my opinion, regenerates at the end of this story. The fact that there was no announcement, no fanfare, no inkling of what was about to transpire, it just made the final few moments sting that much more. Normally, when an actor is going to leave the role of the Doctor, we know ahead of time. We're given time to emotionally adjust to the change, to prepare for the end. The actor goes on a kind of farewell tour, and we all celebrate their run as we settle in to watch their final spin in the TARDIS. For this regeneration, however, no fanfare, no announcement. And not only that, but denials and evasions when asked directly if Shooty would be sticking around for a third season. No, instead they opted to go with a surprise reveal. Well, color me surprised. This is obviously not what the plan was. Shooty was excitedly discussing plans for Season 3 just a few months ago. Rumors have been swirling forever that there was not going to be a Season 3, that Disney was going to drop Doctor Who, that Shooty might leave. Sure, but nothing was confirmed leading up to this final episode. This was an incredibly ham-fisted failure of an execution that's going to leave a lot of the fan base scarred and disappointed. Honestly, I'm kind of pissed off. I'm pissed off at Disney for ruining yet another major franchise that I loved when I was a child, and I'm pissed off at Russell T Davies for writing such bizarre and embarrassing material for Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor. I blame the two of them, the big dumb company and the individual artist, for this failure. I hate that I have to write such a negative review of this episode. Unlike a lot of rage-farming reviewers on this platform, I don't take a visceral joy in tearing the works of others to shreds. I give honest critiques of creative works I'm actually interested in. I try to deliver as authentic of an opinion as possible, be it positive or negative, because I genuinely love this show, and I love to pick it apart and analyze it, figure out what makes it tick, what works and what didn't. So I always find negative reviews to be much harder to write and get through. But here we are, so here we go. I know I'm focusing on the horribly sudden regeneration, but I hated this whole episode, full stop. Far before the realization of what was about to happen started dawning on me, I was cringing and rolling my eyes through the entire first half of the proceedings, which is essentially the entire conclusion of the whole battle with the Rani. Sorry, I mean Omega, the big stupid CGI skeleton monster who also looks like a baby. Why does everything look like babies? What is up with Russell T Davies and babies? Why does he have babies on the brain? Why? Essentially, the first half flies through the entire conclusion of the story at a breakneck pace, frenetically jumping from one scene to the next, too quickly for us to catch our breaths, or even understand what's happening without subtitles on. Then we get an abrupt, unsatisfying, and all too easy defeat of our main villain, and the show drops to a snail's pace, as it slowly rolls out a deeply existentially disturbing premise, desperately tries to sell the audience on it through impassioned, over-the-top speeches from basically every character, and then walks us into Shooty's upsetting and undeserved exit, followed by one last desperate, sweaty attempt to hold fans' interest with a flash of nostalgia bait. I'm not going to turn this one episode review into a deep dive analysis of the entire so-called RTD2 era. That's a whole other video I'll bring myself to create in the near future. But I will say that the big problems I saw were a lack of faith in their star, forcing bizarre plot decisions like the bi-generation into the storyline, in what can't help but feel like a wrong-headed attempt to appease a certain sector of the fan base that just can't handle a black actor being the only Doctor in the universe. Overly simplistic allegories about real-world issues that were too on the nose by half, and often muddled or outright wrong in their messaging. I know RTD's heart is in the right place, but execution and context matters. And just generally sloppy writing and some truly bizarre ideas that seem specifically designed to alienate and drive away all but the most dedicated fans from the series. I feel like this final episode combined all of these aspects together to make one of my least favorite episodes of all time. Unfortunately, bookending Gatwa's era with his worst stories. Alright, that's enough generalized ranting. Time to get specific, starting with the cast. Shudigawa is solid as ever in his surprisingly final take on the character, barring any future cameos. Once again being essentially asked by the showrunner to carry the show, he's saddled with some of the worst, most cringe-inducing dialogue he's ever been given in this story. But he soldiers through it and puts his heart into every impassioned line he is forced to deliver, elevating some truly weak material. I don't know what else to say. Shudi, we hardly knew ye. May your future hold much success, and projects that don't waste your talent quite as aggressively as this show did. Belinda is completely wasted and tossed aside in favor of making Ruby the primary companion for no discernible reason that I can fathom. They literally rewrite her entire character to basically just be mommy brain, and then they literally put her in a box in the basement to get her out of the way. I know I used literally twice in that sentence, but I want to emphasize that I used it correctly in both instances, just to underline how truly bizarrely she was treated in the story. She goes from desperately wanting to be reunited with her parents, you know, her actual family who she's actually spent years of her real life with, to being willing to trap herself for all eternity in a box with an imaginary baby that she's known for one day, and never see her parents again. Again, what else is there to say? I absolutely hate how they completely rewrote her and sidelined her in this final story. Much like Shudi, the actor pulls off a heroic feat simply by making the insane dialogue coming out of her mouth sound halfway believable. Ruby's there. I hate to say it, but I hated that she was in the story, because of how much she took the spotlight away from Belinda. Belinda went from promising, interesting companion in episode 1 to shallow, one-note side character by the finale. Ruby gets to go through the character journey and heroic final showdown with one of the Unholy Trinity, a laughably pompous title for such a weak and feckless collection of underused villains. Ruby gets to do the companion stuff, and her acting is fine, but whatever. The Ronnies, both of them, get barely anything to do at all in this episode, before being unceremoniously dispatched in one of the most obvious, "the monster you're freeing is gonna kill you" moments I've ever seen in anything ever. Archie Punjabi gets to do one speech, and then she's chomped down by a baby skeleton and out of there. Anita Dobson is even more wasted, doing virtually nothing of note aside from running away at the end. I totally called this, by the way, sadly. Omega! Well, what do you know? Another massive reveal of a classic villain. I guess I spoke too quickly last week when I said that the Doctor will be facing off against a flesh and blood villain rather than another giant CGI monstrosity. I'm just picturing giant CGI Omega, kind of like some sort of a giant Dark Souls creature. My prediction is not clever, by the way. It was just me putting together all the laziest tropes I could think of, combined with RTD's missteps from last season, and voila! I was depressingly accurate. The unit crew is there. My only note is that all of them deliver one, if not several lines of dialogue, that feel particularly overwrought and melodramatic. The episode looks really expensive, but I will say that it lacks quite a bit in flair and vision. It just has a very generic bright daylight look to the whole thing, whether interior or exterior, and there's never really a moment where things feel particularly dramatic or arresting visually. I'm also just getting sick of that one unit set, and seeing it in so many episodes gives the series an unfortunate sameness across its run. I complimented the Ronnie's base last episode, but I feel like it was presented and filmed with a bit more care last time, with more thoughtful and interesting camera motion, and more intentional lighting. This time around, it just feels like it's blasted with stage lights, and a lot of the shots are just generic mediums or wides to hold as many characters in the frame as possible at once. The bone creatures look cool, but they don't really do much. They start lumbering towards unit base, unit starts firing lasers at them, and neither side ever reaches the other to pay off that particular action sequence. It's just jangling keys in the background. I also just gotta point out this moment where they rotated the entire top half of the building to point the laser in a different direction. Like, do I even have to say anything here? I know this is Doctor Who, where crazy, silly things happen all the time, but I think this falls more into the distractingly stupid category for me. It was also one of the few moments where I actually laughed out loud, so maybe it was a positive. A small, so bad it's good moment to keep my soul from completely escaping its corporeal form during the viewing. And while we're on the subject, the Doctor's final joyride looked pretty green screeny, and the moment where Shooty flew through the ribcage had me scratching my head. Like, the entire planet and probably the universe is at stake here. And if you crash and die before reaching the Rani's tower, then billions of lives are lost. Belinda will be trapped in a hellbox with a baby for all eternity. But whatever, go joyride and pull off some sick stunts dangerously close to the giant bone monsters. YOLO! Woo! Omega looks and acts nothing like the classic character from the original series, so I don't even know why they bothered to bring him back. Other than nostalgia bait for the name recognition, of course. Oh, that's all it was. Got it. The Doctor defeats him incredibly easily, too. He just grabs the Vindicator off the wall and shoots the bad guy before he even has a chance to get fully out the door. The Doctor claims it has the power of a million billion supernovas, but it just looks like a stream from a proton pack to me, so I thought that was pretty silly. Alright, now let's dig into the story itself. Ooh boy. To start with, the pacing is atrocious, playing the entire conclusion of the Rani menace in fast forward in the first half, and then crawling through incredibly boring melodrama that just keeps looping and repeating itself over and over again, with several very slow, drawn-out scenes, full of cloying, unrealistic dialogue and insane, unbelievable character choices. The plot needs to rush through the first half of the story at a million miles an hour to essentially just get rid of Rani, Omega, and the entire conflict in order to have time for the real story, which is this weird Poppy rescue plot. We are left with over half the runtime to slowly, painfully drag us through the mental gymnastics required to make us care about the baby we don't know. Explain why the other characters don't just care, but fiercely, deeply, righteously care about the imaginary baby. To the point where Belinda is fine with having her entire life history rewritten, and the Doctor's cool with killing this version of himself. It doesn't work at all. The biggest problem with this episode, and far from the only one, is that its emotional core is wrong-headed and actually incredibly creepy and unsettling when you think about it. I guess RTD took some notes from Moffat's Joy to the World episode. The idea that you can just rewrite reality so that people that didn't have children now have children, people who didn't have mates before are now in married relationships,
I have been a housewife.
and that two platonic friends, one of whom is gay, were mind-controlled into being in a married relationship and actually producing a child out of that relationship, is deeply disturbing and can't simply be hand-waved away. I don't care about what kind of timey-wimey bullshit you use to obscure the implications. It is simply a disturbing premise that upsets me on a visceral level, and I could not stop thinking about it for the entire story, especially as they doubled and tripled down on the premise, and characters started acting like alien robots. The Doctor and Belinda are just incredibly blasé about the whole thing, and their mutual instant excitement when they discuss having a baby together is really off-putting.
We've had a baby.
In a single day.
I get that the episode wants us to think that they didn't have actual sex, but it's very poorly communicated, and they don't do a good enough job of dispelling that idea. So we're left with just a bunch of imagery of the Doctor and Belinda waking up in a bed together and kissing each other, having a baby, being excited about having a baby together even after they come back to their normal selves, etc. It just comes off very icky. And I don't understand why RTD thought this was a good direction to take their relationship. I also hate that the Doctor and Belinda become so instantly like mama bear, fierce protective of this imaginary baby that they've known for all of one day.
But she isn't real.
How dare you? I have been in the halls of the Goblin King. I have stood in the palaces of the Daleks. I have entered the caves of Satan himself.
Don't you tell me what we can and can't do. 'Cause I don't care what UNIT thinks, or Time Lords, or gods, or anyone. I remember her being my daughter, and if I remember it, then it's true. Not one of you is taking her out of existence. Have you got that?
Belinda acts as if it really is her child, to the point that she's willing to curse herself to an eternal hell of a deathless existence in a sensory deprivation box just to save her.
If the Rani wins and we are destroyed, you will be locked in there for all eternity. You wouldn't starve, or age, or suffocate. You would just be forever.
With Poppy.
With Poppy.
Let's do it.
It just feels like the Belinda that we grew to know and love. The feisty, independent, take-no-nonsense nurse has been completely overwritten by another character. A single-minded mother obsessed with saving her child. That's not a bad character type per se, but that's not who Belinda was for this entire story, so yeah, it just feels like you stole Belinda away. It also feels eerily similar to how Joy became obsessed with that stupid AI star thing in Joy to the World, to the point where she literally commits suicide in order to birth the star. Belinda also feels like she's been brainwashed or hypnotized into loving Poppy. It just feels gross. Like these women are being completely taken over and mind controlled into thinking they love something in order to become its protector. Like they're infected with a parasite or something, losing all free will and agency and essentially just being forced into becoming a mother, which you would think is the antithesis of this supposedly progressive show. Not to mention completely at odds with this whole 1950s dystopia idea they've been playing with for this whole story. For all of their grandstanding about feminism, RTD and Moffat both come off like they secretly think that women's only role is to have babies. The Doctor just straight up gives Ruby's mother a fresh baby like it's a housewarming gift or something, and then she's just automatically happy about it, as if the Doctor didn't just hand her an enormously challenging lifelong personal and financial responsibility. I mean, damn, Anita from the Time Hotel shows up and even she's got one in the oven now. What is up with this obsession with babies? Just why? Poppy is cute, don't get me wrong. Casting picked a very cute and likable baby. Congratulations. But Poppy is not a character. We never spent time with this Poppy. She just randomly showed up as a ghost for 5 seconds a few episodes ago, and now she's here. So care about her, damn it! The show is definitely aware of this deficit, so they try to cram the episode full of as many awkward, unnecessary cutaways to Poppy as possible. They're clearly trying to make the audience go, "Aw, cute baby," enough times. They will be magically as fiercely protective of her as all the other characters suddenly inexplicably are. The trick might work for people with babies on the brain, like RTD, but not for me. I need more to make me care about the fate of a character, baby or not. Bottom line, the baby never feels like a real character, or even like a real person within the reality of the story itself. So I can't bring myself to care when she disappears at the end of the story. And I loathe how much the Doctor and Belinda have to lose in order to bring her back. I hate the concept of the character, and the ham-fisted way that the episode insists that I should care about her, without putting any effort into it beyond a bunch of random close-ups and finger-wagging diatribes from the cast. When the Doctor and Belinda start giddily talking about their plans to drag their baby all across the universe, like it's no big deal that they are suddenly parents against their will, I was already extremely irritated and weirded out. Little did I know how much worse it would get. When they started folding her jacket, and it kept getting smaller and smaller, I instantly knew what was happening, and my hopes briefly rose. Maybe they wouldn't have to deal with this bizarre and troubling development, and we can all just move on to the next season. It felt strange, being so out of step with what the show wanted me to feel, as it laid on Murray Gold's string section extra thick, and kept cutting to Ruby's teary-eyed face. They wanted me to feel sad, but I just felt relief, as well as impatience that they were dragging it out so long. Little did I know just how far this would drag. Ruby's speech to Una to save the baby was so lame, and took forever. It felt like the writer was desperately lecturing us about why we should care about the stakes of the current situation, since he knew that a lot of viewers probably wouldn't be on board with what was about to transpire otherwise. Belinda's brain falls out of her head and gets replaced with a post-it note that simply reads Poppy, as Ruby reactivates the sleeper cell brainwashing that she received in Wishworld, and she insanely gives the Doctor her blessing to go off and rewrite her entire life story so that she can now have this baby that she was manipulated into claiming as her own. The Doctor heads off in his TARDIS with a plan to slightly shift the timeline using his regenerative energy. It was around this point that it started to dawn on me that they were actually gonna regenerate this guy who only had 2 seasons and 18.5 episodes under his belt. When he said,
"Man, I like this face,"
my heart sank. Then we got yet another montage of past Doctors' faces flashing across the console screen, and Jodie Whittaker showed up. His fate was sealed. Her cameo was a bit exciting and unexpected, but it really felt more like the first female Doctor, herself suffering from subpar writing and general mismanagement during her run, showing up to comfort the first black actor to ever be the lead of the show, as we watch his series become irreparably damaged as well. It was a very bittersweet moment, leaning a little bit more towards the bitter side, sadly. The Doctor fires his regeneration energy at his own TARDIS, shattering the TV set? And then he wakes up in Belinda's backyard, having successfully rewritten all of reality. Somehow. Belinda's entire life gets rewritten at the end, and the reveal that she was always trying to get home to see her baby was some breathtakingly irritating retconning of what we've already seen. They present it like it's such a clever twist, but all I could think about was the Ruby Road sign suddenly materializing out of nowhere as the Doctor revealed the twist last season. Your twist is based entirely on rewriting scenes the audience already saw, with additional stuff that simply did not occur the first time around. And I don't care if this time actually has a sci-fi explanation. It still feels weak and way too similar to the reveal last year. I'm also disappointed that I never got to see Belinda's father sing karaoke, or even meet the man. That was teased at least twice, when original, not brainwashed and rewritten Belinda had an actual character arc and goals to achieve. Actually, I strongly suspect that there's a scene on the cutting room floor that shows exactly that. Probably during the scene from this promotional image that definitely got cut, once they scrambled to rewrite the ending and kick Shooty out. This was very obviously last minute. We meet the new Belinda and get the absurd explanation of how she was always trying to get back to Poppy. And then we get the disturbing additional detail that Poppy's real father is a man that Belinda isn't with, but who she dated in her 20s. So the reality reset caused a man who previously didn't have a child, was just living his own life, to now be an absentee father. That seems, totally morally wrong, and just digs the episode's hole even deeper. And then the Doctor leaves the brainwashed Belinda and her child, materializes in the deep emptiness of space, steps out of his TARDIS to be alone with the universe one last time, and god damn it, there's that freaking Joy Star from that episode I hated, and his last words are literally a reference to that bizarre plot. What the hell? He regenerates in a huge burst of energy, perhaps representing all the untapped, unrealized potential that the actor brought to the role. His face fades away completely, rather than morphing, which is odd. And poof! Rose Tyler pops out and stares directly into the camera lens as an introduction. Pure cinema. So, what else is there to say here? Doctor Who fucked up. Disney fucked up. RTD fucked up. You had a great actor, all the money in the world, and a 60-plus-year-old franchise with limitless possibilities and a built-in fan base. And you drove it into the ground in a shockingly short period of time. You inundated the series with strange and unnecessary changes, made it way too short and rushed, and was really sloppy, lazy, and all over the place with the writing. You did not handle this with the care and attention it deserved. I know Doctor Who has had its ups and downs in terms of quality, and there are other eras from the classic and modern series that have also rubbed me the wrong way. Matt Smith's second season springs to mind, but I don't think I've ever been quite as frustrated with the series. After this clusterfuck of an episode, I don't know where Doctor Who goes from here, but it's gotta be far away from all of this. I don't care if Disney renews it or not. In fact, probably for the best if they don't recognize the value and release their grubby paws from it. RTD, unfortunately, has to go. Bringing him back has proven to be a massive mistake. He's become too insulated from reality, too angry and self-righteous, without seeming to fully understand some of the real-world issues he's attempting to tackle with any depth, and just being too lazy with his story arcs and writing in general. I think he just has too much clout in the industry, and he has too much involvement in the history of the show's success. So he's most likely surrounded by a bunch of yes men. I said last episode that he has J.J. Abrams syndrome, and I think I'd like to add that he also has a bad case of George Lucas. This is just what can happen after you bring old hands back to a franchise after decades. You might not get fresh ideas. You might get someone with outdated ideas who just thinks they know best, and has too much prestige and power to be told otherwise. This season was going so well up until this finale. Not perfect, mind you, but leaps and bounds better than last season. I was bracing for a bad ending, but I wasn't expecting an explosion that would lay waste to the entire show's future. This episode retroactively hurts not just this season, but this entire era, because I'll always know what it's leading up to when I start it. And it's not even that long. I guess the show has also caught a bad case of Game of Thrones. If this is the best they can come up with, then I do think the show needs a long rest and a reset, because it feels like it's running on fumes. Having Billie Piper pop out at the end, as much as I like that actor and her portrayal of Rose, just feels like a nail in the coffin for Doctor Who's creativity, and a desperate sweaty gamble to keep at least a few particularly nostalgic fans interested. I am not amongst them. The War Between the Land and the Sea is still coming out at some point, and I guess I'll try to watch and review it if it seems any good, but I'm honestly not remotely hyped about that series. I've never been a big fan of any of the Doctor Who spin-offs, to be honest, and I can't imagine a show about the secondary characters from UNIT who I already feel like I've seen too much of over the past few episodes, fighting the classic monster who was terribly realized in its own most recent outing on the modern series, holding much interest for me. Honestly, I think I might just feel depressed watching it, knowing that the mainline series it's attached to has failed so miserably. So yeah, I hated this episode. One of the worst in Doctor Who history, in my opinion. The emotional beats ring hollow, everyone is weirdly overly dramatic and irritating. The villain is completely wasted and replaced with a stupid CGI monster, which is then dispatched incredibly easily. The implications of the reality rewrite is just plain icky. The central moral dilemma feels wrong-headed, and it also feels like the writer on some level knows that. So he's trying to lecture us into getting on board, rather than earning it through telling a good story. The first half is absurdly rushed, and the second half is unbearably slow and draggy, then becomes shocking in the worst way, and ends on an incredibly depressing note. The only redeeming factors of the story are some moments of flashy, empty spectacle, and the presence of a bunch of good actors, although they're given no good material to work with. I give The Reality War a D-. And that's it. That is the end of my final review for the season, for the final episode. I still enjoyed doing this. Thanks for joining me for all these reviews. It's sad that it's on a weird final note here, but you know, c'est la vie, it's just TV, whatever. Next week, whenever I get my next video out. Apologies for this one, taking so long, by the way. Straight up, I was, work and life got in the way. What can I say? I didn't fall into some deep, dark depression after the final episode aired, and I couldn't bear to make a review or something. I was just busy. So moving forward, the next video out and released will be a season overall review, a season review. I'll rank the episodes. We'll do that, make that happen. But other than that, I do want to get back to classic Tom Baker Doctor Who reviews, because those are always good. That's a good way to cheer yourself up. If you're not happy with current Doctor Who, go watch Doctor Who back when it was good. And also not being showrun by Russell T. Davies or Stephen Moffat. I don't think I want to see any of their stuff for a little while now. I've already reviewed the entire first season of Tom Baker, and now we're on Terror of the Zygons, which is an all-time classic, one of my favorite stories. I will be reviewing that one next, so stay tuned for that. If you like what you saw here, please hit that like button, subscribe, check it out. I make reviews about Doctor Who. Also want to branch out and start doing more reviews about other sci-fi stuff, or just fantasy stuff, things I like in general. And I just want to say thanks one more time to all you guys for tuning in and watching these reviews, some of these reviews, one of these reviews, or all these reviews. Really appreciated all the comments. It was really fun digging into Doctor Who again this year. Even with the weird ending, I still had a blast doing this. And most of the season was really fun, so it was a good time. Anyways, I've talked for way too long. So until next time, Kay, signing out.